when he was talking about how you can or cannot actually. You can't smash a sub button, you can only gently tap it. It was one of those, thought it was some funny shit.
I remember that. I remember those good times. Yes.
Well, it's not so much how many buttons you have. It's when to press them in the right order with the right amount of sincerity, perhaps.
I just smack that like button like you smack a bag of rice.
I used to tell my students to say, did you say please? And they think, why would I say please to a pooter? And it's like, well, that's a pooter. That's a computer that's pooting. And say, well, it's not that you're apologizing to the pooter. It's that you are trying to get a better attitude, so you're not going and being frantic and getting frustrated.
I imagine that happens a lot in like programming.
Yeah, it can be if you're in a problem-solving mood, you're in a getting it done mood, or you're getting a frustrated mood,
or you're in a fuck around and find out mood.
Yes.
I have some computer questions, some robotics questions for you guys after the show.
Oh.
Yeah.
Who knows, maybe we might even start during the show. It is fitting, I guess, that your intro starts with fire, as I recall.
Yeah.
Okay. Shay, do you want to talk about the Writers Guilds?
Yeah, I am gonna bring it up, but I
fire.
don't have a whole ton to talk about. I haven't.
Yeah.
Yet.
Okay.
Only
Yeah,
because
just
I think
doing
it's-
that part.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you kind of just gotta keep talking about. Otherwise, like,
Or
It's
it
important.
like loses steam. Yeah.
it matters.
Yes. It does.
Oh, hello there. Hi, everybody. Welcome back.
What's up?
It's been a while. This
It's
is
been a
Debate Hub,
while.
and we are here to talk about volcanoes. I have Landon and Maanyaa with me. I am Chesh, your master debater. If you are here, welcome,
Yay.
welcome. We are going to talk about volcanoes and whatever else happens to catch our fancy while we're talking about volcanoes, because we do have a little bit of a habit of tangenting away into oblivion.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Who us?
Quick thing, writers are striking down in, I believe, Florida, California, Paramount. Where's Paramount? Paramount Studio in Florida or California? It's Hollywood, right? California. I'm Canadian.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah,
Canadian.
it is Hollywood's in California, and the United States. It's that land across Trudeau's ditch.
Right. I'm Canadian, and I'm bad at geography. Anyway, go and support writers. They're doing a lot of work out there. They're out there. They're picketing. They're fighting for fair wages. They're fighting for their careers, and they're fighting against some studios trying to be douchebags with AI. Surprise, 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 surprise.
Oh, God.
This show is not using writers' scabs. That is, there's people trying to break the writer's strike. Nor is it use any intelligence, artificial or otherwise.
Oh, I'm real? Oh, okay.
No, Maanya's been a deep fake all along.
Yeah,
Ever
that's been
since
Smitty who has been sitting here.
Oh my god, Smitty is Maanyaa and Maanyaa is Smitty the whole time.
Oh
This
no!
is
Oh no! The Matrix.
Oh no. So
Andrew Tate is like now whiling on Twitter that
he is.
UK won't like fight for him and extricate him from Romania like they do
Why
for
would
like
they?
people who are getting like he's acting like a fucking victim of some hate crime or something like that. I'm like, dude, you chose to leave that country and go to Romania so that you can use the system to your advantage and be a little more corrupt, and now you're whining. Like, bitch, take it. Take it.
Well,
Okay, I'm
Landon,
done.
you were on a trip. How was
Yes,
it?
I was in the land slightly down under.
Yeah, I was
And
Yes.
yes.
To the bereavement of all of the flat earthers down there, Australia is a place that exists.
Yeah. You're going, for Singapore, also into Indonesia and Australia and that sort of thing. It was a fun bit of stuff. It was a total solar eclipse. I stuck
Yes.
myself for the sun don't shine for 1 minute 11.2 seconds. Yay! And
That's awesome.
it was an amazing experience. The sun was very beautiful. The corona was very this time more symmetrical. It didn't have long streamers like you have when the sun's relatively inactive. We had a more active sun. We had actually lots of prominences and things shooting off the edge of the sun that looked really cool. And of course, Indonesia was fun. Very interesting collections of island cultures, many different types of cultures, and of course, I got the nationalistic geography notion that Indonesia claims to be the world's largest archipelago, though that distinction actually rightfully, perhaps, depending on how do you say it, might belong to Canada. If you talk about large in terms of usually large as in size, where I think what's unique about Indonesia is that they have a lot more islands than Canada does. And that's been a thing that I think they've been realizing that. So they've been pushing their, we're number one archipelago thing, because the number of islands used to be somewhere around 11,000. It's been extended to 18,000 because they start taking blocks off the size of a coast of another island and say that's another island. But 11,000 still is a lot, right? And you might say that Indonesia is also the largest non-frozen stuff, because there's lots of islands up in the northern part of Canada that are just under ice stuff, and so it's hard for the Canada to count them accurately.
Yeah.
But anyway, Indonesia is a substantially large and probably the most numerous archipelago. Lots of volcanoes. Those islands have their own little subcultures there. So visiting different islands, you find people with different dresses, different customs, similar but different.
And how does Indonesia, did you find, compare culturally with Hawaii when it comes to the way they treat their volcanoes?
I think it's so Indonesia is not a Polynesian culture, and so
it's Muslims, right? It's Muslims.
Well, actually, that's interesting as well. I found that there's a mixed. Indonesia is I think officially an Islamic country. They do not have Sharia law to any extent. However, there are also very significant enclaves of other religions as well. And so you'll see a lot of Catholicism, Protestantism is there. In fact, but Indonesia distinguishes between the two. They don't just call it Christianity. They have Catholicism, they have Protestantism, they have fundamentalism. There's also a whole sort of Buddhist thing going on there as well. And underlying all of these kind of areas that might have a more dominant religion is folklore and folk religions. So even though you might have gone to a place, let's say, that is fundamentally Catholic, you see through the culture in the villages lots of other sort of folk things. So they do things and symbols and traditions that have a grounding in more indigenous religions. So they tend
almost
to
sounds like India.
Yes,
but the other way around.
but that's it's not the same thing that you might say you're in a Buddhist part of India, but it has lots of other stuff woven in, and that
also going on. Yeah, like for example, a lot of our architecture is from Mughal times, and Mughals were Islamic. So that architecture comes from the side of like Turkey and all that. If you go, but the folklore is more dominant, like around Buddhism, Hinduism, even Sikhism. So yeah, it's very interesting. And then obviously the other type of architect that's been influenced by the Britishers. So yeah, it's a full-on mix.
Well, Indonesia also has like
styles.
its own political craziness, like everywhere else, where it's just like the politics are. I had somebody on Twitter who follows the channel ask me if I could look into like talking about some news happening in Indonesia, and I was just like, this is a ball of fuck that I have no context for.
I heard that too. I read that.
It has taken me a while to try to like wrap my head, because I don't want to like just look at 2 or 3 headlines and be like, well, that's ridiculous. Why would you do? I'm like, I need to learn a little bit about the culture and the people involved and what those parties mean and where they came from, so that way at least I have some contextual
I'll tell you something
understanding.
I'll tell you something funny.
Please.
When I used to work at the Auckland International Airport, McDonald's, so we were right outside the departures, and a lot of flights went and came from like Indonesia, and whenever there was a cancellation of a flight, every family from that flight would come to our McDonald's, and the only thing they could order, because obviously they wanted, something halal, but the only thing they could order that wasn't halal was fish. So we had so many orders for filet of fish combos and
Oh wow.
so yeah, it was like, oh my god, we're out of filet of fish, we need to. And then we had another McDonald's like at the entrance of the airport. It was smaller than us, but we had to sometimes go there and like nick their stock.
You have to get more stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, or like also, like fascinating, like how like a culture can influence the food, like in like that at an airport. And yeah.
So
Yeah.
So Maanyaa, I have to then ask, because you were at a fast food joint at an airport. Yeah, how often did somebody in ordering all of a sudden say, "Oh my gosh, I got to get my plane," and just like vanish, right? Like they in a panic. Did you
Let's say
see
20% of the time. 20% of the time.
20%?
There would be passengers like that. And let me tell you, if there were early morning
massive.
flights, I'll tell you what would happen. Saturdays, Sundays, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. The morning rush. Fuck my life.
Oh wow.
Fuck my life. One coffee machine. It has 2 nozzles. I get it, but like there would be 4 of us, 4 girls working on that one coffee machine.
Oh my god.
Someone's putting the coffee, someone's refilling the coffee grinder, and the 2 girls were like frothing the milk at the same time, and still we would get behind. It was so bad. And we actually there used to be a coffee and a bakery joint sort of thing besides us. We shut them down. We since we got opened the McCafe, that's what the coffee part of the McDonald's is called. We shut them down.
That's kind
anything
of too
that
bad,
was
because that would definitely
Yeah.
help if there was more than one option and then
Yeah.
areas to.
And there would be people who used to be pissed off, and they would just like throw their tickets and like, I'm going, my flights, blah 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 blah. And then there was one guy who started like screaming at us, and then there were like other people who would be defending us. It's like, guy, have you seen the line behind you? They're just like one coffee machine, and they're trying to do their best. And funny, hilarious, and we used to laugh about it
This
afterwards.
obviously has to. We have to do a show starring Maanyaa about airport fast food stuff, because I got some comments about airport stuff too. But I think Maanyaa sounds like an expert, having lived there. It's its own special subgenre. So
Is this gonna be like a Maanyaa airline special? Is that what you're?
I also travel a lot, and I can tell you some stories I've observed, and also ask Maanyaa some questions. So let's consider that as a fun thing, because I can see from Maanyaa smiling that she's got some stories to tell, and
I have some stories.
Some customers to tell off. So
Oh
yeah.
boy. We also got
some good,
something
some
real-
adorable, some like.
Before we move on, there is a comment from Smitty that I think needs to get shouted out if we're gonna have like a starring Maanyaa situation, and it says, how many likes for Maanyaa to braid her hair?
I don't know. I unless it was somebody who is who has a habit of abusing themselves, debasing themselves for funds. I don't see that as being Maanyaa, right? There are YouTubers who sit there and say, how much money to shove a bean up my nose, right? Type that. I don't see Maanyaa as being that type of.
Listen,
of
Smitty doesn't
person.
have to get likes. He just has to ask me, and I'll do it for him. He knows that. There's a reason I keep my head down during all the live streams, and because Smitty likes it.
Oh.
Yes.
For Smitty, he just has to ask me to do it, and I'll do it.
There you
Yeah.
go. All you
So-
have there. That's the answer. Just ask nicely.
So I think, as I say, India, Indonesia has very interesting stuff in there, and I am not an expert in Islamic culture by any means, but I have traveled in a number of places, and I know from certain areas in certain countries the Islamic complaint about Indonesia. They'll say, Indonesia is one of the biggest Islamic countries, right? I guess in terms of population, perhaps, right? And yet they'll say, but then you go and dig it deeper. Like that's a source of pride, but dig it deeper. But Indonesians are apostates because they allow this, right? So going to places that are very strict Islamic stuff. That usually, if you go beyond there's lots of Muslims in Indonesia. It is, but they, so you'll see a place, a mosque, but you'll see they'll having talismans, and you'll see them having indigenous icons and statues that would be prohibited in a more strict society. And so you might say, I don't want to say this, but
yeah, because like they're Shias, they're Sunnis, and it depends from I think to region to region or the political structure of which type of Islam is dominant in the region. I don't know about Indonesia though, but then apart from that, then there's also how much how many how many kafirs you allow yourself or you deal with. If you go, kafirs are non-Muslims or people who don't follow the tenets of Islam. So if you go to Middle East, they are totally closed off, except Dubai, if I'm not wrong, they are open. So, but for some reason, they're not questioned around that. But I guess because they've already put themselves out as a international business hub, so maybe. But they're still very, very conservative about marriages, between people, the citizens of Dubai, and how you can get citizenship, blah, 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 blah. So, but I think so in Indonesia, it's not that much of a problem. So that's why the more you get integrated with the other religions in society, the more you're considered to be out of touch with Islam. I'm not saying that that's what Islam dictates. It's what the culture is from different
places. But there's also political cultures that the government at times would want to placate a certain minority in order to gain political power. And so there was a big push on cruise ships not being openly debaucherous in certain areas.
Have you guys noticed that we haven't been hanging out in a while, which is why we're totally talking about volcanoes?
There were volcanoes in Indonesia. I do
want to actually ask a little bit more about that. So finish your thought about the cruise ships, and I have a question about Indonesia and.
But there's a thing where there was a concern in the Indonesian government that cruise ships might have couples who are cohabitating in the same room.
That might be a thing that happens on cruise ships.
Right? And so that was official government stuff, but the people who would come aboard, the customers who would come aboard, were more interested in the perks of the job. So the ship would kind of be told, customers people are coming on board, stay out of the dining room. In the dining room, they'd have a big food banquet, so they get lots of food. They'd be given baseball caps and things like that as not as bribes, but as welcome gifts on board.
To persuade people, we're giving you these nice things. Why don't you use them? Just use them. We're just giving you a cap to cover your head. Just gotta use it.
Yeah. So that sort of thing, and so what turned on the ground is very different than there. Anyway, lovely stuff. The Komodo dragon stuff are big. These are these lizards. I mean, they're like 3 meters long and 300 kilos. I mean, these are not little thingies. We went to a national park where we had park rangers who would let us approach a dragon that already eaten, and so was not interested in us, type of thing. That was
for anyone
prefer to not get eaten by acid mouth, please, thank you.
Yeah, like, and if anyone thinks they can outrun these creatures like Komodo dragons, don't
No.
even think about it. Don't even think about it. Like, there's a reason why there's some regions where there. I think so. Landon, tell me if I'm wrong or correct. There are some parts of Indonesia where there's a lot of like banana growth, and people are not allowed to go there because they're Komodo dragons, and people try and do that there a lot of times, and they end up dead. If I'm not wrong, like there's
Yeah,
some areas that
and
are
we.
restricted.
I mean, I did see a dragon far off chasing down a deer and catching it.
Mhm.
All
Right,
I can think
and all,
is like
so it was going. I would have to say, if I had to guess, it was probably going upwards to about maybe 25 kilometers an hour.
Yeah.
all
This
I
thing
can
you think
think
is a
of
lumbering
is
stuff,
like
and all it did is it just got up to the it got up to the back of the deer and took a bite out of its hind leg.
mind, like yeah.
Yeah,
And the
that's what it needs
peck
to.
predator showed us, far off, we could see this is chased, right? And so this lumbering thing was able to, because deers can zoom, it's able
Yeah.
to get up to it, take a bite, and said, and the ranger said, in
It will
about
then
2
wait.
days, that deer
He's dead.
will succumb to illness, and the dragon will then very leisurely keep track of it.
Yeah. And it's
There's
because I think
a
so. It's because there are a lot of bacteria in their saliva. It's not a poison. It's like their saliva has such large
that's why I said
concentration
acid.
of bacteria.
It's
Yeah.
there's
And
a
so, but
all this makes me think of is the Americans going like, oh, go push the bull, go do something with a lion, and like at like the
Mhm.
lion safari in America, or like lower yourself
Or an
into the monkey
orangutan.
cage, ha ha ha, ha. And Indonesia's over here like, hold my beer.
yeah,
Or
and
alligator
lizard.
pussy
Hold my
shit.
lizard.
so one of the things I didn't realize is that the dragons will eat themselves, and particularly the young,
yeah.
right? So the young dragons that hatch out of eggs, their survival depends on them getting to a particular type of tree and climbing up in the tree, because the parent, the mother, will actually eat the young if it catches it, right? So they spend about some extended period of time, I don't know if it's about 2 years or so, up in the tree, and
Oh yeah.
and until they get big enough that they can survive defending themselves on the ground, right? And so in some of those, like banana trees as well, don't go up into the banana trees, because there are dragons up there that are spending their time. They eat insects, but they also develop bad, as I said, they develop a bad taste in their mouth. And so you get bit by one of those cute little mini dragons up in the tree, you're still in trouble. But there are also a bunch of medical people that have extracted certain substances in dragons for antibacterial stuff, right? So there's been some research.
To clarify for Komodo dragons, though, they have harmful bacteria and they're venomous. I went and checked the Smithsonian. So they are
okay.
both. Yeah, they
All
have a venom gland in the lower jaw. So it's in addition to the harmful bacteria that they develop, there's a venom that prevents the blood from clotting, which causes massive blood loss and induces.
Oh boy.
Yeah,
So
and
it is a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B.
And the policy that the big ones actually do drool. I mean, there's drool hanging out of their mouth and so forth. It's not. Their social
correct,
etiquettes are different.
It is not a poison. It is a venom.
Gotcha.
Hey, we learn things here.
So yeah. Then I came back to Australia. We went along the Kimberleys, which is the northwest coast of Australia, where there was all kinds of waterfalls and other indigenous art things there. Experienced. I took the train from Darwin to Adelaide. So I was going from north to south. Work with government officials, as well as stopped out in a bunch of places.
Was the train ride nice? I've never been on it.
It was amazing, right? I had a nice, actually, it was. I had my own sort of little 2-bedroom suite and an adjoining bathroom, and they knew that I was very interested in Australian wines, and so I would get, before the meal, they would lay out like 4 or 5 wines that I would do tastings of, to then and work. Same thing on the ship. Work with the sommelier to find out what was on the dinner, and we would do tastings of wines. Again, Australian, and
I recently found
that's
out
where I
this.
discovered wines from Tasmania.
Ooh.
And I know Tasmania gets a raw deal sometimes of jokes in Australian culture. They are kind of like the Newfoundland of Australia.
Does Canada really make that much fun of Newfoundland? Like, I know, like, there's...
Newfoundlanders make fun of themselves. That's the thing. If you go to kind of bookstore to find a Newfie book, it will be by Newfies, about Newfies, in pride of Newfies. I mean, yeah, Newfies do it to themselves. I think that's part of the thing. You can't mock us because we do it ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's fair. I'm not telling them what they can and cannot do. I didn't know, like, if Canadians were well known for making fun of specifically Newfies more than everybody else. Maybe. I don't know.
There are other places as well, but that's one that's famous. So anyway, Tasmania get about a bunch of Australian jokes at times, but they have they've developed in the last 15, 20 years some extraordinary wineries there and extraordinary wines. I was blown away by some of the wines I had from Tasmania. Anyway, so they were bringing out lots of, on the ship and on the train, lots of various wines I was doing the tasting of, and then I would select a bottle. And you people, I picked on the ship or a train, because the train always meet with government officials, but on a ship, got to know you want to sit at Landon's table because he's going to have a nice bottle, and I'm not going to drink it all. I basically have other people go and share it. So you got good wine there. So, and then of course I then spent time in Queensland with an alleged Australian. I say alleged because everything you say allegedly. A person named Red Eye. And we had a fun time there, but that's all allegedly.
You allegedly had a fun time.
Yes. So
I do have a question.
Yes.
That is volcano related about Indonesia as well, and a little bit about politics, because I know that we pick on New Zealand and White Island and the politics kind of around them not doing maybe some of the monitoring and alerting that they should be doing. And Hawaii has like what we would probably call, and correct me if I'm wrong, pretty good relation with outside monitoring and keeping an eye on things, as long as there's not too much interference.
Or successful monitoring of volcanoes.
Yeah. How does Indonesia fare on that scale? But between New Zealand, if 1 is New Zealand and 10 is Hawaii, where is Indonesia?
The volcano. I mean, first of all, I think they have a developing volcano monitoring network. There is certainly an interest in understanding potential impact on shipping, because being this archipelago full of islands, shipping is rather important. So they tend to look at the impacts on shipping, and they're developing a pretty good monitoring network. The native people around the area, I would say, particularly more active volcanoes, have certainly experience in managing to live near there. We weren't in an area that had been evacuated, so we didn't see how well that worked. I think also particularly those areas tend to be somewhat remote. So it's not like the problem they have in the North Island of New Zealand, where it's a tourist attraction to a cranky volcano. That's the combination problems there. So I think Indonesia is developing. There isn't a volcanic tourism. People don't go to Indonesia to the volcanoes per se, and that's, I think, more for, people go to Indonesia to go to places like Bali.
Right.
Which, if you're going to experience island culture, don't just spend your time in Bali. Go outside, right?
Now, is there potential for Indonesia and the Indonesian government to, as these monitoring systems develop and evolve and get better, that they could potentially get better, develop the tourist area?
I think there's potential for some of that.
Maanyaa, you're muted. We see you laughing, but
Oh no, I unmuted myself. I'm just looking at this message that was hidden, and it's like I'm just laughing at that shit. I'm sorry.
No.
I got
okay.
distracted.
Maanya's doing
like-
something. Maanya's off in the ether. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, like channel thinking they leaked Andrew Tate shit. We never claimed that. What the fuck, dude? We never claimed
Oh
that.
God! All right.
So Indonesia does have tourist spots where there's volcanic things are part of its landscape. It tends to be the more extinct stuff. So there's some places like the 3 beautiful lakes that are in the pits of dormant or extinct volcanoes. They have those sorts of things. So they do have a lot of volcanic landscape and tourism, but they haven't really developed the here's a erupting volcano, go and see it type of thing, right? Those also tend to be areas where they're not as populous for reasons. Locals tend to not stick around. And here's a case where they can easily move to other islands when it becomes inconvenient if the volcano becomes particularly disruptive. So there is volcanic tourism, as in many of the islands are volcanic in origin, and therefore it's like saying, if you go to French Polynesia, you'll be going to islands that are volcanic, right? Even though it's not erupting stuff. So the difference between having, because North Island of New Zealand is massively volcanic with hot springs, that sort of thing. Indonesia has that sort of stuff.
They have that tourism.
But they don't have the tourism of let's go and see an erupting volcano type of thing. Both because there's a bunch of areas of Indonesia that are somewhat remote, and so we visited some places that normally ships don't travel in just because of our set of things. So yes, we did have volcanoes. Now I must admit that their volcanoes have been in the news with regards to tourism. So here's a case where Mount Etna in Italy has been having eruption stuff happening. So there's lots of stuff happening there, and in particular, one of the things that the trouble with in the region is that Etna, so Etna's it's right over there, right? It's actively erupting. It's been having impacts on flights. So there's a lot of airplanes that have basically been grounded because you get a ash dusting and things there.
Wow.
Excuse me. So Etna's been having some pretty spectacular eruptions. Last year it had the extraordinary some of the fountains where Etna and of course it had very gassy lava emissions that resulted in extraordinarily high lava plumes, and Mount Etna captured the record for that event. The record used to be held by Kilauea. The Kilauea Iki crater used to have in 1959 had the distinction of being the of having the world's highest lava flow, but that was actually captured by Etna. That Etna this year had nearly 2,000 meter tall fountains, whereas Kilauea only had 700 meters. That's still a lot, right?
Like,
it's a big thing. So,
is there a building you could compare 2,000 to? That people would know.
2,000 meters. That's by the way, that's 6,500 feet for those that are metrically challenged. So you're no, I think that isn't a building because that's 1.25 miles or nearly 2 kilometers, right? It's 2 kilometers high. So that's a pretty tall bit of fountaining. And I think
I was just thinking of like, it'd be like 17 Sears towers all stocked out of each other.
Yeah, it's hard for me to imagine Sears towers being on top of each other, or I guess the the Toronto Tower, that sort of thing is there, right. but it had it's had some extraordinary events, and so they had very, very famous lava eruptions that would that have occurred there. So it's a question of whether or not Mount Etna is actually changing, going into a different eruption phase. It seems like that Etna has been getting much higher degrees of ash. I mean, not assuming of gas in there. So you have really tall jets that are gas pressure filled that shoot up and do lots and lots of stuff. So it's Etna's put on an extraordinary, spectacular shows there. This year it's been more ash and less lava stuff. But as you see, these plumes here are just extraordinary in terms of the sets of things. So Etna's been putting on a good show, and
looks like Edna's trying to dethrone our Lady Pele here, Madam Pele.
Yeah,
somebody's just gonna end up being like, it wasn't a challenge.
Yes.
Nada, I think so. What Madam Pele is gonna do is hold my beer.
To be fair, that's what I do every time I say, wow, this is the dumbest thing I've seen today, and then people send me stuff, and I was like, that wasn't a challenge. Please stop.
So I think doing very high lava fountains requires there to be not enormous pressure, but also a constricted vent. And Pele's 35.5-year eruption from January 4th, 1983 to August 2018 was punctuated by the fact that Pele actually had several vents, and gas was being released at the top and released at a side vent, which made it difficult for it to build enough pressure to blow it through a small hole to get high.
That's what she
said. Volume was there. While the volume was there, it tended to be less constrictive, less gas pressure driven. Now, people think that when if there was a new renewed summit eruption after the summit kind of cools down, that we have this large block of rock cooling that might constrict and make it hard for the pressure to work up through cracks, and you might then get initially tall fountains eventually. But it's a phase, and Pele's not in a phase. So volcanoes are erupting right now. There are 49 volcanoes erupting on Earth at the moment.
49.
We've had 49 there, and I apologize for that. That's a spammer.
Hello,
I don't think I want to have a.
It's a spammer?
I can't do the.
Answer it on the video. We'll let chat answer them.
Oh, I'm sorry. I unclicked it.
Dang.
That's the like.
If I thought more better, if I thought more, I could have done the live on.
I have a joke for this, but I'm not saying it live. I'm gonna type it in the Discord, and I need both of you to come on screen so I can see Landon again. And I'm gonna type out my joke because I want to see your reactions to my joke.
Yes, why you do this? Okay, type your joke.
If you know, you know.
I did not see that coming. I was like,
Well, I will. I will.
You don't have to
say
answer.
This.
You don't have to say anything if you don't want to.
I will say this. I had a celebrity call me to say, "Do you realize this particular show is trying to get you to get me to come onto their show because they think I don't want to come on because of da da da." And they say, "Well, if we get Landon, maybe they'll be more comfortable and don't do it because we don't."
What?
And it was like I was going like,
Okay.
damn, any chance of this person coming on and doing some sciencey bit of stuff has been ruined by this putz.
Oh no.
Whoa.
Oh no.
Who can't because they think that anyway. Too much
Okay.
inside.
April
Too much
also
inside trick.
said
Too much inside cricket.
April said, "Hello, Elon."
Oh god. I love April. Brilliant.
Oh, mwah.
Sorry, Landon. If I hurt your ears, I'm sorry.
Bapch for 10 said, "Aside from learning a lot recently about the human body, how can we get some grasp on our health? It's amazing how much we think we can control, yet the very land we stand on moves."
Well,
That's brilliant. Actually.
being comfortable with the fact that the land moves, we're on a planet that's not geologically dead, and that the volcanic systems are extraordinary part of life. They and you look at some of some of the most lush areas for plants for farming are these extraordinarily volcanic soils that have come from areas that are so again, understand that the volcanoes are actually a very critical part of life. They are part of the life cycle, and that they're not the doom and gloom that the History Channel, so-called History Channel, tries to make, nor the apocalypse stuff. They are actually really critical parts of our life cycle and our biosphere that should be accelerated, to be appreciated and to be enjoyed with a safe distance.
It's almost a concept of that in Hinduism that is of Shiva, that he's the god of destruction. Like, so whenever he dances, he causes destruction, but then after destruction, when you're destroying something, you're creating something else, right?
It's a cycle of rebirth style.
Yeah.
It's
that's an interesting concept. Go ahead.
The primordials in D&D are the same thing. So, like, the primordials are about creating the world, and destroying the world, and recreating it, and destroying it, and destroying it, and it's like a push and pull between all the different elements. And then the outer gods, so like the primordials are the inner gods. The outer gods are like your Bahamut and your Pelor and those guys. And those guys are all about trying to keep and maintain things despite the natural movement of the flow of the elements. And so, and that's kind of the way humans interact, right? We are trying to prevent things from changing and mold things the way we want them, instead of just learning the steps of the dance.
Exactly.
Very good. Very, very good.
I'm profound.
But to continue on with the notion of health, I would say again, thank you very much for your £10 donation. And I also say that it is because of volcanoes that you have the basis for life and for your health, right? Volcanoes are a very integral part of healthy living. And so we celebrate that. And that's, that notion, as Maanyaa said about Shiva's dance, that Pele's dance on the island is not something which is considered to be evil or bad. It's a very necessary. It's part of the landscape, and people accept it as happening, not as trying to. Now they try to keep when she gets in fight with her sister because there's this other person that two sisters are in love with, and it's the god pantheon stuff with the usual sort of intrigue. They try to make sure that the gods are calm and peaceful, But they do recognize that Pele goes wandering, and she goes up to the top of the Long Mountain, Mauna Loa, and does her dance there, and then comes back down to Halima'uma'u, another place like that. So this is part of life. They don't sit there and say, we're going to do this to prevent it from happening. It is function of life. So your health is directly dependent upon volcanoes doing their thing.
And I think it's also privy to like your own personal health, right? Again, I'm not a doctor. This is just talking to my ass. What do I know? But you're better off to, instead of preventing yourself from doing things, finding things to do proactively, right? So preventative is more difficult. It's easier to go find yourself like a more active hobby than you, or go find yourself a different type of food that you like. So if you're trying new things constantly and then just, now you have a plethora. So if initially you're like, oh, I eat like this specific type of food all of the time, and then you start adding new things, instead of trying to stop yourself from eating those things, adding new things to your diet that you enjoy and trying new things, to then giving yourself a wider berth of things to choose from, you're not stuck eating the same thing all the time. It will help you break bad habits that you don't like. So then it gives you a little bit more control because you have more things that you can choose between.
Yeah, that concept is pretty much used in risk management also. You do your risk assessments in advance so that before anything happens, or, because it's happened quite a while, like something happens on another site of ours, and then they will issue a preventative action for all the other sites. And they're like, okay, we need to do this now. But I'm kind of glad that my manager, she's so proactive, and she tells me in advance what I should be focusing on and why. That we've already done it, and you're like, yeah, we are already halfway through it. Okay, cool.
Then you don't have to stop doing whatever you're doing. But Landon's over here with the danger unit. I saw him pick that up. I saw you grab that danger unit.
What was that?
Put that down. It's a Kinder Egg. It's the inside of a Kinder Egg.
Now, I did declare this when I brought it back from Canada, right? I ate the offending chocolate in Canada.
The offending chocolate. To be fair, that chocolate is pretty offensive. It's pretty trash.
It is trashy chocolate, but from the USDA perspective, it is not legal to bring back the Kinder Egg in its true form. So I had to eat the chocolate there, and then come back and anything to declare, yes, I have a Kinder Egg toy, just the toy. And they go, oh, all right. Because they hear Kinder Egg and they think, do I have to do this $2,000 fine thing? Because
they're like, money.
They're concerned. But I was not tempted to stick this in my mouth and swallow it, right? It was.
How do we know?
Yes.
You just have to believe him.
So notice I say that Maanyaa, she used the term risk management. She did not say risk elimination.
Right.
And a similar thing with volcanoes, right? You don't eliminate risk, you can't.
Yeah, there are some risks you cannot eliminate.
Yeah, you can minimize it, and you can get rid of there's some things you can get rid of entirely, but like when you go to the hierarchy, don't use lead paint. Not using lead paint will eliminate a specific risk, but not painting.
So like Shesh is right. So when we go through our hierarchy of controls, the most preferable thing is to eliminate the hazard or the risk. But if you cannot, then you come like, can we
what can we do? Yeah.
Yeah, can we minimize it?
And often
that's how you go down.
You're managing the risk reward function. Yeah. So if you have a function where lead paint is actually required, and yes, there are functions where this is required, you then mitigate the risk given the reward. And so in the natural world, oceans are very risky, but we manage them. We don't sit there and say we got to drain the oceans because people might drown and fish.
No one's allowed going swimming, no boating, no shipping, no nothing.
Right? Water falls from the sky and sometimes can create floods, but we can try to manage and mitigate those risks. We don't sit there and say you must not live anywhere where rain could flood. We do flood management. because there's a risk-reward ratio of that. A similar thing with volcanoes, right? It's when you're approaching a volcano, there is for a purpose. You're not going there just to have fun. There is perhaps a purpose for actually approaching the lava front or the lava lake, and you have risk mitigation factors to get the reward for the data you need to help manage risk on a larger scale.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like when you're going to a volcano, just going for fun isn't risk. It's not worth the risk, and so you have to be getting something more out of it. You need to justify what you're doing to justify the risk that you're taking.
Yeah,
and like you can
And-
that kind of ideology kind of maybe it's not an ideology. That kind of like thinking and that kind of processing can be basically applied across the board. Right? A lot of that, we saw a lot of people massively fail at this during COVID, right? People that were like, what risk? What are you talking about?
I'm perfectly healthy.
So,
Yes, and
kind
some of
stuff
that
applies across the board.
I'm not putting
So
something foreign in my body. I'm not getting vaccinated.
yeah, it's a bit of risk management is also in terms of managing risk and understanding, having an acceptable risk profile, understanding that risks are taken, and yet because of looking at the things of a particular reward or a benefit from having a risk.
Right.
So we do risk management in flying and in driving and so forth. So risk management is not simply we just prevent risks from happening. If you are so risk averse as not to do things, you're going to miss a lot of life. So volcanoes, important part of life, important part of this. What makes this world a lovely place and a livable place. We look at the red dots here. These are ones of active. I mean, there's stuff can be on it. So Italy has Stromboli and Etna, and they're usually almost always kind of in sort of continuous eruptions there. Stromboli is harder to get to, but there certainly are. It tends to be less cranky recently than Etna's put on big shows. In Africa, Europe, we have Ethiopia and Congo has two, ones that are spewing out pretty good. This Danakil Depression, which is up in the upper part of Ethiopia, this is where Africa is beginning to break in two, and so there's great risks up there. It's sad that the risks of going to that region are from people, not from the volcanic stuff. There'd be a place I would love to be able to go to, but it is an area of the world which is has people problems, not volcanic problems. A shame. Or Congo has a similar thing. So Indonesia, you look at Indonesia. Indonesia is back down to 6. They had 7 actively erupting, spewing volcanoes. They're back down to 6. I say only 6 because they kind of dominate the volcanic line of stuff. You go there and see things spewing on. They also have 2 volcanoes in addition, or excuse me, 3. These orange ones that are in a blowing out stuff type of thing. They're in a high unrest thing as opposed to just actually. We look over in North America. North America is relatively quiet. We have 2 volcanoes in the Alaskan Peninsula, Aleutian Islands, that are actually fairly high as unrest with phreatic explosions, that sort of thing.
So,
going on there.
Quick question about Alaska. From my understanding, the Alaskan wilderness is quite prolific. It's very large. It's very full. It's got a whole lot going on. Would that be related to the volcanoes that are in the area or were in the area and are now dormant?
I mean, the volcanoes of Alaska tends to be along the peninsula area up here. Now, this is one of the spots that active. So this region tends to be the spot. Often people think of that Alaska interior is up here, but this tends to be the part of the Ring of Fire zone where, like, that volcano is. If you look at what this one is here, it's over there, right?
Okay.
We zoom out, right? So
Okay.
we have one there and one there. This is kind of this Ring of Fire stuff that goes around here. Tends to be where the volcanoes are and the earthquakes are. Whereas often people think about Alaskan interior as stuff up in here. But this is also pretty good interior. I mean, there are really great wilderness areas here. Denali and so forth has got lots of fun things. So I wouldn't say, but the majority of volcanoes in Alaska are along this sort of Aleutian chain and the southern part of the interior.
Can I ask a question? I think the last time you were mentioning something about Mount Erebus. Erebus in Antarctica?
Yes. Down here. In fact, yes. So, are you asking? What is it you're asking about?
I don't remember. It's just in my notes. It says Antarctica Mount Erebus. Did you mention that? Was it active or was it?
Yeah, I mean, it usually usually has one of the largest lava lakes in the world. Let's go and see what that state is. We'll get to that spot, I think.
Yeah.
Mexico has 4 things that are spewing right now with 2 unrest. So it's a little bit behind in terms of volcanoes for stuff. So excuse me, Mexico has 1, Guatemala has 2, and Nicaragua has 1. So Central America, I should say, has that. But this one in Mexico is actually a place where a lot of tourism stuff. You can actually go near this region, and it's had a ongoing eruption since 2004. So you see that this particular volcano's got a pretty good eruptive history. South America, Colombia, a couple Ecuador, Peru has got lots of stuff. So Mount Erebus is currently erupting, and it's got a lava lake, active lava lake. So, so there's a satellite image of Mount Erebus.
Oh wow!
Erupting there in the Antarctic landscape. You see, this is like 500 meters across. So it's got a huge lava lake.
Thermal in the bottom left. Is that what we're seeing? Where this is one really bright red spot, everything else is just dark.
There's thermal there for that.
Wow.
You can almost see how it's moving underground too.
So Mount Erebus is in the same island as McMurdo. It's an island off the coast of Antarctica. So interiorists, people that are in the interior, say to people in McMurdo, "You're not really in Antarctica. You're on that island off the coast." Much like Europeans say to those Brits, "You're not a European. You're that island off the coast." But it's a beautiful place.
I'm just going to answer
beautiful place.
Steve Areno's question real quick. Is Erebus something from Greek mythology? Yes. Erebus is the god of dark region of the underworld.
So Mount Erebus eruption started in 1972. It's been ongoing ever since, and it's got lots of quakes, of stuff there. It's got a lava lake that is like 500 by 600 meters wide. It's about 300 meters in the summit. And it's got caldera, so it's actually a pretty active set of stuff, and it's a nice place. It's a little bit hazardous to get up to because the geothermal stuff gets mixed with the ice, and you get it's difficult to get up near there. And the lake is so active, you wouldn't be able to approach the summit.
Oh wow!
They could probably get probes there near the stuff, and so there's been talk about space probe practicing going to surface of Venus by having stuff go over the side and down into the region, but not on the lava.
Would Erebus be an example of what we would expect to see during an ice age? or like how a volcano would behave?
Could be, yes. Certainly, volcanism didn't stop because of climate.
Right.
There. So Antarctica has one erupting volcano, and Vanuatu has one that's erupting actively. There's a whole bunch of stuff in Kamchatka that's Russia. Another one in Russia, Japan, and Japan has a pair. So you have a bunch of volcanoes. So Earth is very volcanic, very active in its wiggly stuff, and it's part of life. So yay, volcanoes.
Yay.
So, any other questions you had before we go on to what Madam Pele is doing?
Yeah, no, I think I got my questions out. Let me double check chat.
Yeah.
I think we're good. Although Mr. Sirius did threaten to go to his local Kentucky government to suggest draining the oceans on Landon's recommendation. So
yeah. I thought they're more interested in banning books, but
no, that's Florida.
I don't know.
Kentucky doing that too?
I don't know. No, in the general region, it turns out that there are actually studies said that the majority of book bans come from 11 people whose life seems to be to say,
"Oh my god,
this book is offensive. Don't read it."
Oh my god, just start a book club. Just start a book club and make a newsletter that nobody's gonna care about. God, like anybody else does.
So, Madam Pele, we've had we had 62 earthquakes over the last 24 hours, but they're like smaller than 2 or less. Sulfur dioxide is only 120 tons per day. So that's a very, very that's sort of like outgassing from previous lava sitting there.
Okay.
Very, 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 very low in its summit set, but lots of quakes. If we look at the tilt meters, we find these tilt meters don't really have much in the way of inflation deflation stuff. There's a little bit of wiggles. You get an earthquake that will go boing boing, but this is not really much of a deflation
Boing,
inflation
boing.
event, even to go out to the yeah. There's a little spots
she
here,
boobied
here.
down the stairs boobily.
Yes, but I would hardly call these DI events, right? So you have a lack of gas coming up. Again, 120 tons a day is piddly. That's just old lava, degassing, and there's not much in the way of DI like events, if anything, along the area. So I mean, you can kind of see weak stuff, but this would be if this is a cardiac patient, we'd say, your heart has significant problems. So not much in the way of deflation inflation stuff. But if you look at the tilt stuff, that the mountain continued to expand. I mean, it's been an upward trend. In fact, look at this is the beginning of here is the beginning of the current of that last eruption, which is now officially stopped. And it's been going zoom up there. And we have these other cases we get to zoom up to here, and then you get an eruption. Gurgles for a while, stops, zoom, eruption, comes down. This is the end of that great eruption, the 35-year eruption when it ends. So we have this zoom coming up. Is this thing the beginning of one of these things where all of a sudden something will break out and it will go down? Well, we don't see the gas reaching the surface. Is that because the gas is being trapped underneath and building pressure? That's possibly why the mountain is expanding. Is it because that Holy Mau former lava lake is congealed and become now a cap, which is putting pressure underneath? We don't see, however, evidence of tilting. We don't see the tilt meter actions.
Right.
So we're not seeing the mountain beginning to form as if the magma chamber is actually turning over, right? It's much more static. But we see all these earthquakes. Again, they're talking about saying having 60 earthquakes underneath the summit. And indeed, when we go to look at the earthquakes, we find 2 zones. All this set of earthquakes up here, this is the top of the Kilauea summit with lots of quakes. And this region here are deep quakes that are very like 30 kilometers, 20 miles underneath the surface. This is the sort of the hot spot plume, which feeds Kilauea, Mauna Loa, and Kameahua, Kautaloa, formerly known as Lohi'i Seamount. This is the upwelling. These are
hard to say. It seems to be slowing down a little bit when we look at the last.
Yeah, it tends to be stuff. And again, if you look at the depths here, it's a pretty deep. This region here, polar region, has been classically the region which has deep quakes. This stuff is at the summit. Now let's look at more detail of the summit. What's happening on the last 7 days, and we find we find this region there. Let's see if we can get this guy to behave itself. I'm going to try to get back. Trying to get this guy to go away. So if you look at what's happening here, here's the Kilauea summit. It's just not zooming nicely. Here's Kilauea summit, and we see there are quakes going down the spine. This is the one spine of. There are quakes down in this region. Pu'o used to be down here where the lava used to come out. So we do see quakes heading down the side of there, and they're relatively shallow. So there are lots of quakes showing up in the thing. So it's seismically active. So there's pressure, but we're not seeing in the upper chambers any kind of deflation, inflation, turnovers. We're not seeing the gas reaching the top. So you might say that Kilauea is under slight unrest, but it certainly is not erupting and doesn't show signs of it erupting soon.
I even see a whole green spot on there.
That's the current spot, that's the current spot. So if you look at like, for example, what happened today, these are here's the Kilauea summit, right, region. And I'm trying to get this thing, if I go and kind of close this spot, it's being maybe the key. Nope. I was trying to, because the problem is when I start to zoom in, that thing expands as well.
Are you hitting control when you zoom?
Let's see if I can return back.
Try.
Oh, where?
You might want to give it a second. You might actually need to hit the refresh button.
Yeah. The browser's confused.
Okay, here we are.
There we go.
If you look at what is it? Oh, there you go. Got it.
Here we go. So here's Hale Mau Mau. Here's the summit set here. We see with these quakes, and these are the last 7 days. We see that these are all these piles of earthquakes underneath the summit.
Right.
Even just today, we see that there are quakes here. Here is underneath the actual lava pit, and we have a few things off to this side here, and a few things off to this side. I wouldn't say this is evidence of magma move on the move.
No, it's
why?
true.
Because we would see the tilts coming
up
from but in the last 7 days, it's piling. This is down the one spine, this is down the other spine, but not far. This back pressure is also common from the from pre-eruption stuff. You get a lot of earthquakes in the back area here. Go ahead.
So as compared to last time when we were observing the number of earthquakes, the earthquakes have increased, is it? The density has increased, or yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Someone's prediction is gonna come true from last time.
Right?
Oh yeah.
And if you look over 30
Not
days,
mine.
now you see again the general trend. Lots of quakes at the summit. There's quakes in his back here, and not that we don't expect to see lava coming, being formed in this region. This tends to be a sort of back pressure down deeper that feeds us up. This, if we saw lots of quakes marching this way or marching this way, we might suggest stuff.
Yeah, because
forward. But this,
question is that when you measure the earthquake, is it from where the earthquake originated? Is that what the spot is that's on the screen?
Yes.
The epicenter, got it. So
and if you look at a spot here on the quake, you'll see stuff here where the information about its depth and its magnitude stuff, and you can go and get the actual waveforms. You want to see the earthquake wiggles and that sort of thing. But it tends to be again that this region has lots of quakes again because of the volcano. And when one of the things that we saw see this line of quakes going down the last 30 days. This is going down the spine, down essentially the southwestern spine. His previous historical stuff. This spine out here was the flow going out to Pu'o, and that great 35-year eruption was magma going on here. It hasn't gone down this path since about 1969, 1970, 74. And so when people saw this bunch of quakes going down, they thought, oh, maybe magma's on the move. But we didn't see up above the tilt meter suggest that the magma was deforming. Nevertheless, this is something to watch for, is to see if we see more of this stuff happening where the pile of quake starts focusing from the top to the side. That may be the magma coming up, hitting the plug, which is former lava lake, and being diverted to the side, going down the tubes. Again, this spot down here is deep quakes of the stuff coming from the hot spot up towards the volcanoes. So seismically, it's still there. The mountain's definitely expanding. We've got essentially a significant uptick on the eruption set. But does this mean that we're about to have an eruption where it drops down, breaks out? Well, I would think we would also see tilt meter evidence of it. We also would see gas coming out in spots, right? Because the reason why the magma is going to go up toward the surface is because you have gases coming from out of solution, from liquid to vapor, and pushing the magma up toward the surface. And we're not seeing the gas being released yet. But so thermal wise, the lava lake is relatively cool. There's a little bit of a hot spot here, again, of an outgassing spot. This is not lava. This is just a thermally hot area.
Really chill compared to last month. Last month we watched. So we missed one month.
There's a little warm spot here of outgassing stuff. So it's thermally relatively cool, as they say. So they're doing a lot of work in the in now that the mountain is relatively quiet, in trying to do seismic mapping. And so we have this truck called a thumper truck, and essentially it has this system where it jacks itself up into this little thing and goes pound, 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 and they basically make little quakes on the top that are
Pound Town.
That then go and thumpy it's called, and thumping makes thumps, and you have seismographs around there to measure the speed at which sound is moving through the ground, understand density of rock and cracks and that sort of thing.
Wow, that's
Needs,
so cool.
It needs
Now,
googly
you might
eyes.
you might you you might think, well, wait a minute. If it's got
The
32,
googly
62
eyes would go
quakes
crazy
over the
when
last
it's
7 days, would then interfere with it? Well, no, those are small quakes, small bits of time, and you can between when it's not quaking, it's relatively
right.
quiet. You don't have the harmonic tremors that the magma chambers are going boom, 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 boom stuff, and so you can do these thumpy things and map out structures and cavities much better. So
The
so
guy who rides this truck must be like having a hell of a time. Because like I get to pound the volcano.
Well, as I say, it is an interesting truck there. Obviously, when it's
All
doing this
right, we need to
pounding,
raise
people are
money
away.
for more volcano awareness, so we're gonna start offering sex where you don't have to do anything but get inserted and then just hang out in this truck while we do the measurements.
Yeah. So
We'll do
the
all the
truck has
work
a
for
particular
you.
generates cyclic signals of a particular frequency that they know where it's happening when. So you monitor out here. That is listening, seeing how fast the sound waves move through. So basically, you're generating sound that they can monitor in order to understand propagation, understand, how is there liquid, how much liquid lava is magma is underneath this stuff versus cracks versus cavities. So it's a
Brian
optimum
also
time for monitoring.
Brian Steven brought something up as well. It says we also have big bubble booming ships for ocean graphing.
Really?
Yeah. Yes,
Damn,
Yes.
I'm in
absolutely.
the
Yes,
wrong.
definitely.
I'm in the wrong profession. Fuck my life.
Yeah, I want to go on a big bubble booming ocean ship.
Yes.
Yeah,
Goofy
the
ass
ocean
name.
potters that do bits of things, but yeah. So they basically are basically helping probe the magma structures and cavities underneath the ground because they have now very specific frequencies they can filter out, especially the volcanoes not erupting. So now is the time to
Letty
understand what's going on in this region.
Letty also pointed out the earthquake machines are real. It's just like an insert conspiracy theory here.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was about to say. Here we go.
Gas wise, everything is pretty normal. The trade winds send the gas from the Holy Mile crater to the southwest or southwest, but at 120 a day, it's not much in the way of a hazard. In terms of this is what it looks like live.
Yeah, it's gone. Yeah, it's gone quiet. Wow, oh god. It's like, yeah, I'm
You see,
gonna
Yeah,
I'm gonna
relatively.
sit back and relax.
there are this stuff of basically outgassing. This is basically the steaming of lava pie that has been baked and is now cooling on the rack.
Yeah.
And so that's what the webcam looks like. If we look
Still
at
no
it,
swimming.
Talking about pies, now I'm
yes,
hungry.
swimming is
Landon, it's your
not
fault.
recommended. Thermal wise, there's a little, you got that little hot spot there, which is not. I mean, it's around 150 Celsius or so. So it's toasty, and steamy, but it's not. It's that spot right there, or I think it's actually that spot there. So there are hot spots there. But if you look at from a point of view of current overlook, again, that sort of snapshot picture
Wow.
with the lava lake looks
That's
like with all of
close.
this lumpy bits.
That's close. Wow.
Yeah. So this has now become a cap on top of it, top of what was the magma chamber that's cooling, and so they're kind of monitor say if eruption is going to start here, it'd have to break through all this rock, and it may be that what's going to happen could be is that the magma being frustrated can't break through the cap will work its way down the spine and come out the side. Perhaps.
Question from the chat
Sure.
is Mr. Sirius asking if the air is particularly dangerous there currently.
The air?
Yes.
I mean, I think the air is not so bad. I mean, certainly around here, these are gas vents that are putting out gas. It's not a particularly thick stuff.
Well,
But,
we watched on camera live on one of the streams. We saw a bird just fly by and just pew. So
Yes.
some days it's
Yes.
more dangerous than others.
Yeah, this
So
at
I guess,
120 tons per day. It's not. That was like several thousand tons, and there was lava there, and it's like, what was this bird thinking?
It wasn't.
Going
Yeah.
this.
His mama didn't teach him well.
Every
So you
time
see
we
the
do this
winds are-
show, I'm reminded that I need to get Landon to sit down and watch Dr. Stone with me. Every time.
So we see the winds, trade winds, everything coming down. They're able to scoop through this spot and send it to the southwest. That's this gas. But it's 120. This is actually fairly light. We're seeing more steam than sulfur dioxide there. Still, this is not a place where you want to go there and do a lot of breathing.
Yeah.
This you could probably get down there, but still, other thing is that this ground is slowly cooling and cracking. So
I guess the cork is forming for the plug. I guess that's what's happening.
Yes. And so the question will be, well, what will happen as a result of that? We're not quite sure, but certainly it is not actively erupting there. But the webcams do show some good stuff. So we'll see. We'll see on how it transpires, right? Looking up towards Mauna Loa, and you basically see clouds because it rains in Hawaii a lot. So showers. That would normally you would see the long mountain, Mauna Loa, that direction. But today it's
it's like totally covered.
But that's it's a rainy spot out in the middle of the ocean. So and you can see here is up at the top of the rift zone. So actually this is
art.
Southwest, and you can see there's ice on the ground because it's high enough that actually is freezing up there on the Long Mountain.
Wow.
There's a bit of rain there, but there's also it's a frost high up.
Wow.
That would not be a very
careful if you're walking
place.
there.
Yeah, sharp rocks and ice do not make a good time.
No.
So yeah. Not enough to go skiing up there, but definitely crater hazard walking.
Yeah, like and don't think that if you're gonna slip on ice and fall on your bum that you cannot get really, really injured. People have fucked up their backs when they fall on their bum after slipping on ice. So yeah.
I'm stuck with the Muppets Family Christmas, and watch that movie if you haven't watched it, or if you haven't watched it recently, because every single Muppet falls coming in the door where the icy patch is. Every single Muppet. They're walking through the door in the background, and every single one of them just eats shit. All of them.
It's like that. Yeah. It was like that Star Wars state trooper who was walking through and just bumps his head on one of the entrances.
Except it's every single Muppet.
Well, I have my own personal eruption, but I will mute.
Are you eating tacos? Yeah, go.
Bathroom, all right. So continue on while I be gone for just a little bit.
So every single so the beginning of the movie, when you see the farmhouse, the guy that's supposed to be renting the farmhouse and the dog get warned by Fozzie's grandma as they're coming through the door. She's like, "Oh, you gotta look out for that icy patch dog. Eat shit." Human slips, doesn't eat shit. Fozzie slips on it. Kermit slips on it. Big Bird slips on it. Bert and Ernie. Everybody. Every single goddamn Muppet slips on the icy patch. The snowman Muppet slips on the icy patch. And he's a snowman with no feet. He's made of snowballs. And he slips on the damn icy patch. No, it's not the Muppets Christmas Carol. It's specifically Muppets Family Christmas.
Family Christmas, got it.
Yes. It's an amazing movie.
I'm just making notes. I'm just making notes because I tend to forget shit.
So Dr. Stone is an anime that's basically like everybody on the planet gets turned into stone, and then like a billion years goes by. I don't know the number. There's a number. They give an exact number, and like the one guy like legitimately just counts the amount of time, so he comes out knowing exactly how much time had passed.
Whoa.
Yeah. So and the story follows this guy. Yeah, his name is Senku. And so he starts off in the like pre-Stone Age, and then moving forward, try to figure out what had happened and why everybody turned to stone, and to potentially de-stone people, but also like start rebuilding society, right? So that's the premise of the show. I definitely recommend watching it. It's the Muppets one is Muppets Family Christmas, and I think it'd be really fun to get Landon in the Discord and like we'll just watch it, and we'll pause it every time there's like something science that's explained, and we can all sit down and discuss it. How correct is it?
That's going to be brilliant.
That'd be really fun, brilliant. Right?
Yes, I'm all for it. Let's go. When? Set a date.
When?
Set a date.
When?
So.
Hi, welcome back.
Hello, welcome back.
Sorry.
Maanya's dead. We've killed Maanyaa. I don't know how nor why. It wasn't
Landon
me.
And Shesh have broken me.
I didn't do anything.
Now, the lava lamps are erupting. See, they're doing nice. They're doing their nice.
Mine is dormant.
Looping things.
I don't have a lava lamp. I should get one. So
yeah,
Maanya's
the
but
only
I wore
one
orange.
Oh.
I wore orange, and I've got my Charmander Pokemon cup in the because we're doing volcano, so fire.
Excellent. I like your fire Pokemon thing.
Pokemon Charmander. Yeah.
Charmander. So questions from the audience, or
we got a question from Ink Boy from earlier that I didn't ask because it was the timing was a little off. But Ink Boy asked, how much, Landon, are you interested in various types of mythology?
Ooh.
There is useful prehistoric records that you can infer about things happening from trying to read into mythology about events. There are people working on trying to understand some events around the 900 year 950, that region, that may be a result of a volcanic event that occurred possibly in the Pacific region. And so trying to then understand, well, there's not historic records, there are mythologies, to see if you can get evidence that there might have happened.
The solar eclipse in Norse mythology of the wolves chasing the moon. Or like one of the wolves that chases the morning. Like there's a morning and night wolf, and the night wolf or the morning wolf will catch the other one sometimes, and that's like a sign of Ragnarok is a solar eclipse.
So that's less of the general mythology, more about events in mythological that have been mythologized. That's, I think, is the case.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of like astrology and shit.
The ground opened up and swallowed the city.
Because astrology depends on stars and shit, right? Like solar movements and the lunar movements and everything.
Yeah. So a natural disaster turns into a mythology of people at the time trying to explain or understand things. You can learn from those historic events to try to give evidence to what might have happened, where they weren't either records or people around to record what happened, or in the area, right? Or you don't have the data. So a huge volcanic eruption in the Pacific may be recognized in a mythological event about this god does this sort of thing. type of stuff that is a
Like-
punctuation, but they're not going to tell you. They don't have the scientific instruments to say we had 130 cubic kilometers of ash go in the atmosphere, type of thing. That's, you have to sort of infer some of the stuff through there. So I think
there was a loud rumble from the mountain, so the god was upset and had indigestion, and there was a night for the turned to night for 3 days.
And they decided this king was not good because the volcano erupted, so we
lit him on fire.
Yeah. Now fed him to the volcano. Here you go. Take the bad guy.
There's stuff like that I think that one
I've also mentioned it before that. Yeah, I also mentioned that the Maori mythology also like kind of takes into account like natural events. I think so. I've talked about this before, where a local was explaining that how during flooding a river kind of whips, like it makes a turn at the river, kind of the water there makes a whipping and a slashing, wave. So, and it doesn't make it every time it floods. It makes after several times, like at a frequency. So they know the frequency. So that's why nobody like has any houses built around that, around that bend where that whip happens. So it's like, that kind of information like passed down from generation to generation that you might not know, or they might not, never had any explanation for it, but they know it happens. So they have taken countermeasures to avoid it. So,
Inkboy just says for clarification, if I understand correctly, Landon is not much interested in sun eating Fenrir, but what it says about the story of local culture or history.
Yes, and sort of how is it? So, that's correct. And so, for example, if you look up, and like in Wikipedia, about the year 536 or the volcanic winter of 536, much of what we think happened, the little ice age that occurred, that lasted from about 536 to about year 560. The likely explanation occurred from eruption that ejected massive amounts of sort of sulfate compounds into the atmosphere and caused a sort of temporary long winter that caused a whole bunch of health problems, famine, that sort of thing. And then you look at how the various people reacted to it and how they mythologized to explain this thing. They didn't understand what was happening. You gain a lot of information and insight as to where things go. So you had we had droughts and prolonged colds that occurred from that area. You had lots of famine. You also had disease coming from stuff because there were certain areas where because the climate changed, certain diseases and pandemics took hold of it. And so the best we can talk about as well is that we see evidence that something happened. So we have to turn to mythology to try to get a better understanding about what people were saying as the cause. And you find that the mythology gets more intense into the areas in the Indonesian area of the world than you have in places such as Scandinavia, right? It had a worldwide effect, but the intensity and the type of things that they mythologize from are there. So failing to have history and historical records, you have to rely on mythology and try to read between the lines.
Yeah, you can kind of tell.
Check out the 536. It's very interesting.
If there's like something that is global versus something that was localized, right? So like if something was global, you could see it across multiple cultures and talking about it differently. And sometimes what you're saying is that intensity would change. Whereas like if something was localized, you would see it written in this area only, and you wouldn't hear about it in other places because they would have had no way of knowing.
Now we have backups of other things that talk about in that region that there are Roman records that have references to the heat from the sun being feeble, and that at the noon, shadows from people were barely visible in the ground. That the seasons were all jumbled together. Have records about that stuff, and so we know that something was happening, but we're seeing the effect. The cause is now seen more as probably evidence of
you're reading
a
somebody's
massive volcanic eruption
of what was happening around them, not the data, nor like you'd have to combine it with the geology and combine it with like contextual readings of like the writing styles of the time, and get through like things like prose and how those people were communicating and what words meant in certain contexts. Little language barriers.
Sure. And so you have, as a result, so as part of the thing is you see the results of this event, but the results were a couple of years later. The actual precursor probably occurred in 536, we think, and there we have to turn to Polynesian and Indonesian mythology about some traumatic thing happening, and they're trying to explain this big precursor event.
April wants to know what volcano would be a dream volcano to study for Landon.
Well, okay, so are you talking about a volcano that's erupting, or are you talking about a volcano that's had a history? Because I certainly have my favorites.
Oh, why not both? Why not both?
Okay, well, okay, so my favorite volcanoes, Kilauea, Mauna Loa, Lass and Mount St. Helens, Mount Erebus, are probably my top 5. And if you then add in Rainier, Baker, because they're amazing volcanoes of their type, Etna, Stromboli, and a 10th one I can kind of pick who we want to do.
Sounds like at least all of them.
All of them.
So,
Smitty added a caveat that's really interesting too. Does the volcano have to be on Earth?
So no, so there are fun volcanoes. We now know that Venus appears to be actively volcanic. We've got some more evidence to suggest that there's been very recent eruptions on the surface of Venus. Of course, Io is probably the most volcanic body we know in our solar system. But there also are amazing volcanoes like in Enceladus, around Saturn. There are some, and Pluto has some very interesting cryovolcanic stuff. So there are a bunch of volcanoes around in the solar system that are quite unique. I think from a study.
Okay, we need a fundraiser to send Landon to Pluto. We need to do his fundraiser.
That's why you shouldn't be ignoring. That's why you shouldn't be ignoring Elon Musk's phone calls. You would want to get in a rocket that he made, right?
Yeah. Oh,
he's like, I don't trust that guy. No.
So certainly, Kilauea is certainly
a
dream thing that I have. But if we talk about some different volcano than one of more actually studying, I think Mount Erebus, but that's a challenging thing to stick around. Mount Stromboli would also be being parked near there would be an amazing to see, because it's Strombolian volcanoes. It's an archetype, a particular type of volcano that it has some really good things to see.
A follow-up to that said, if you could go into history, from Steve Areno, that says if you could go into history and film one eruption, what would it be?
Well, that's an interesting.
This is all going to be on a quiz later, guys.
Yeah, for that. So I think so. I would tend to go, for example, I would really have liked to spend some time in looking at some of the major eruptions, like for example, Mount Tambora, Tambora, was a VEI 7 eruption. It is actually in Indonesia. Let's go and look at the set here. Let me do just sharing things. This this eruption, this volcano here, in this region of Indonesia, had an extraordinary 1915 eruption that occurred, had really dramatic ashfall, right? You look at the areas around here of huge, ash deposits that had occurred at this time in 1815, and it had essentially a overpressure of almost 5,000 bars that ended up it basically had this giant explosion that occurred, and some people that had there's pumice, right, up to 20 centimeters in diameter were raining down tens of kilometers, 100 kilometers around the area. It had about 10 times, up to 10 times the explosive energy of the famous Krakatoa eruption. An estimated 100 cubic kilometers of material were ejected. It did affect the climate for there, but you had ash from that eruption, landing 1,300 kilometers, about 800 miles away from the actual event, and you had an estimated it had a huge amount of aftermath that ended up explosion heard around the world with huge volumes of ash. I mean that they were basically piling around and stuff. And that would have been a very interesting eruption to see in relatively historic times. So that would have been a nice thing to have understood, experienced, and monitored better. Probably the historics of probably prehistoric. The other thing that I would have very much interested in seeing.
Back.
I'm sorry. Am I here?
No.
Wait. Let me get back to there. How about there? Yay!
Yay! Beautiful.
So that 1815 one is a pretty good one there. I think there's also probably there is a this Tapu volcano that occurred in New Zealand. Had an eruption.
It is New Zealand.
It had an eruption that was quite extraordinary on in terms of there. It was around 26,500 years ago.
Wow.
And it was again one of the most powerful that we have seen in this sort of era, and there you had a huge deposits that covered New Zealand that from this eruption that were just extraordinary of things. They had for example in the north part of the island of New Zealand, they had ash deposits up to 200 meters thick from the ash from this one eruption.
200 meters thick. 200 meters. Okay.
Yes.
200 meters.
Yes.
Okay.
It was probably the world's most powerful eruption in the last 5,000 years, and it had it ejected huge amounts of the last part of the eruption had 30 cubic kilometers of ash deposit with another on a fast moving flow that moved across the island at speeds of around 900 kilometers an hour. This pyroclastic flow, so huge volumes of power of lava. I mean, imagine essentially
900 kilometers per hour.
Yes.
That has zoomies.
Oh my, that's okay.
There's a follow-up, another question from Inkboy that is do all volcanoes happen on surfaces of planets, or are there some other kind of volcanoes that are not underwater but are also under the surface of a planet?
Well, usually, I mean,
So that's
magma moving inside a planet is not considered to be an eruption. But sometimes you get volcanic events because something from outside smashes the surface and creates a hole, right? So we see evidence on Mars of large asteroids punching into the surface, melting ice that's underground and creating floods, as well as volcanic stuff happening. So you can have induced death by space rocks coming out.
So the answer is like kind of no by definition, but also there could be external factors as well as there is volcanic activity that happens below the earth or below the surface.
Yeah, those are sort of in subsurface stuff, but
There are
usually
magma
a
chambers that get filled,
eruption
and that might be
has to do with material inside a planet coming to the surface, right? That's sort of definition of eruption rather than movement inside. And sometimes you get a thing doink on the surface to create an event, opens up something there. But the reason why I would want to essentially understand the New Zealand eruption would be to understand what led up to it. Same thing with the Tambora, and then finally, I think that the third one I would want to see would be the Mount Mazama eruption that created Crater Lake. We know again, all these cases, these massive eruptions are from a volcano imploding, falling in on itself, opening itself up, and having a large eruption. And about 5,720 year BCE, what was now Crater Lake was a volcano, probably the class and size of Mount Rainier, that fell in on itself, created a massive caldera that spread ash over a large chunk of North America. I would have liked to understood what led up to the collapse, right? Yeah. And the assumption is that this massive eruption, this volcano had lots of eruptions on the side with stuff leaking out, and it fell in on itself. It would have been interesting to understand what led up to its collapse, and then see the caldera before it filled in. The current Crater Lake, second deepest lake in North America, has had about half of that caldera filled in with magma from subsequent eruptions after the collapse. But the original caldera would have been extremely deep and magma-ish. So that would have been probably the third thing. So it would be the three volcanoes in recent history that I would have liked to understood what
relatively recent.
Yes.
That's so cool.
Other questions?
Sorry? Was that Landon?
Good.
I was going to say...
what other questions?
No, I think we've caught up on most of the questions so far. We do have to start wrapping it up. We are almost at the 2-hour mark. But I do want to, before we get into what our predictions were last time and are going to be this time, happy birthday! The very first volcano was on the 27th of last month.
What?
Yay!
Yeah.
Yay! Thank you very much, folks.
Wow. May 27th was our very first one. Yeah, it's been a whole year of tracking volcanoes and watching volcanoes and talking about volcanoes once a month. So we've had 11, now 12 episodes, if I count that correctly, because we didn't miss one just last month.
Well, I missed one because I was off in the land way down under.
Yeah. So congratulations. Do we want to talk about what we've learned in the past year?
Maanyaa?
Madam Pele is Madam Pele.
That's what Maanya's learned. Landon, you learned anything?
Shush.
I've learned how to read some of those charts, because before I would have looked at that chart and been like, I kind of have a little bit of understanding of what I'm looking at, but now I feel like a little bit more confident in looking at a chart and looking through like some of these websites and these data points and actually having a better like conceptualization of what they mean. There's still a couple things I do struggle with, like I'd like to improve upon, and that's mostly like my sense of scale. But I think I might have to go to a volcano to kind of get my brain wrapped around
Yes.
the size of scale, the
Yes.
scaling size.
Yes. Yeah. Canada is volcanically challenged.
Yeah, a little bit.
Um,
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit.
but as I say, so you might have to travel. But
Yeah.
I would say the thing I've learned is better understanding of how the public reacts to volcanoes, and sort of the message I need to do to try to help people understand that volcanoes are. This will be something you have learned if you've been with us for some time. Is volcanoes are natural. They are an important part of life. They are very frequent. There are lots of them. Some of them are more cranky than others. And visiting the non-cranky one can be an amazing experience. Living in the area of volcanic stuff can actually be a enriching life experience as well. So we'll see. It's been fun to see Pele go through the various cycles. We now see a what it's like for Pele at Kilauea itself to not be erupting. We saw a Mauna Loa eruption that occurred briefly after almost 38 years of absence, and how he had a couple a very short eruption, but we've experienced that. So we're going to see as we go on, Kilauea go through these pre-eruptive phases, and the question will be, when will it erupt again? It's almost certain they erupt again. How long will this be? A few weeks, a few months, or a few years of pause? We've had all those happen, and we'll be able to see the signs of unrest and interpret them properly leading up to an eruption. That's to.
And if you've learned something, leave us a comment below to say happy birthday to us in our show and tell us what you learned.
Hey!
Yay!
It used to be fascinating, like how much information used to be crammed into our brains when I used to be in school around geography and geology, but we didn't study volcanoes that much.
Yeah.
So it's good to go back to the roots.
I like
and
how
kind
much
of
I've learned about
volcanoes are part of our geography and geology.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think as well, if you continue with us along this journey and begin to see the rhythm of Kilauea and what's happening, when it does erupt, it'll be a much more enriching event than to say, "Oh, this volcano is erupting." Okay, right? You'll see the progression. We saw the progression from active eruption to decline to ceasing erupting, being in this smoldering phase with gurgling going on, and so that when it re-erupts again, we'll have that perspective that I think is rather precious. I think that's the thing I will enjoy, is to see when Kilauea reawakens and see the process that led up to that event.
We'll be able to recognize the dance.
Yes.
Yay.
And meanwhile,
with
visiting Volcanoes National Park in Hawaii is something to do. This is stuff you can go there and see. Yeah, you're not going to see red stuff, but you'll see a living mountain undergoing active geologic things that normally take long years. You'll see the change going forward. And so coming to a spot like this where there's not lava on the surface, but get an idea about the topography, and then eruption occurs and come back and say, wow, look at this change, and look what led up to it. That's going to be the thing that if you continue on with this journey, you'll see things. So what do we think? What do we think Pele's going to do next?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking there's probably going to be a rest period. I think we're going to see it pick up and then just settle down. Keep doing a little bumps as it kind of settles down.
So the predictions from last time was, if I remember, I wrote it down.
Yes. Got her notes
because I forget. I am a forgetful person. Sorry, I got a lot of shit going around me. So the last time was, I think so, I said slight decreases in activity even in the rumbling, so I'm actually wrong. So that's kind of. Jess said that it will not erupt deep earthquakes and will blow out of the spine. Landon said deep earthquakes along the spine, but not erupt. Am I right? Am I right? Or am I wrong?
Yes,
Yeah, that sounds right.
that's a pretty close thing. So, so what do you think about next month? What will
I gave my prediction already. What do you think, Maanyaa?
What did you say, Jess?
Can I repeat it again?
Sorry.
I said that I think we're gonna keep seeing these little bumps, and we're gonna see it start to slow down, like continue to relax.
Okay. Yeah, I think it will remain at the same level, like and the earthquakes will come down.
Okay. So I'm going to predict that we will still see very low sulfur dioxide emission levels in the 100, 200, or less than 100 type of range. I mean, low sulfur dioxide emission levels. I predict that we will not see we won't see deflation inflation events occur. It'll be this sort of anemic kind of stuff. I predict that we'll see continued expansion of the mountain. Right. So this trend will continue through the next month. I predict that we will see a continued active seismic summit. So when we talk about the earthquakes, we'll continue. Of course, this thing happens in the polar region. Deep earthquakes happen all the time, but I think the summit will continue to be active. I don't think we will see magma on the move. So I think we're not going to see magma going down one of the spine. Won't see earthquakes suggesting that magma's on the path. We'll see continued activity at the summit, and we'll see but we won't see sulfur dioxide emissions. We won't see the inflation events, DI events, but we will see the continued expansion of the mountain.
So we think that basically, I think we're all saying that we're looking at seeing things starting to settle down.
Yes.
With some.
Madam Pele could surprise us.
Oh, absolutely! I 100% suspect and expect to just be completely wrong.
Yeah, but this uptrend, I would be surprised if this uptrend reversed itself. I would be surprised if all of a sudden we saw a period of time of high sulfur dioxide emission coming from the summit. I'd be very surprised if we saw earthquakes suggesting that magma's on the move. I would be surprised if the summit became seismically silent. I would find that to be puzzling.
That would be very odd.
So that's why I think this line is going to continue. The global expansion is going to continue in its trend. The DI events will be essentially non-existent. The sulfur dioxide will be pretty much anemic, and magma will not be on the move.
I like it. It sounds like we got some pretty good predictions coming out. And I think Steve Areno made a really good point. So is this the end of season 1? I think it is. We got a whole bunch of education out at the beginning so people could understand what we were looking at. We started looking at it. We started making predictions. All of us have been right. All of us have been wrong. And we had a full-on eruption.
Yes, and we had even a Mauna Loa eruption at the same time, and you saw the lava lake with the lava sloshing around.
And we watched a bird eat shit.
Yes.
Yep. I think that bird was called Steve. Okay.
Oh, God damn it, Maanyaa.
That's an interesting
Sorry, I
name for
couldn't
a
help
bird.
it. I couldn't
Okay,
help it.
okay. Good.
I mean Steve, who's in the
you
live
know.
chat. I definitely mean Steve, who's in the live chat.
Oh, are we gonna name that bird Steve Areno?
No, no. Yeah.
Steve Shives.
It's definitely the Steve in the live
Steve
chat.
Shives. There's so many Steves.
Steven Crowder.
Steve Applebee's.
Steve Applebee's. Oh my god, I need to make a character called Steve Apple, and it's like a D&D character, like an NPC. That'd be super fun. I like Steve Areno's like, no, why?
Yes.
Oh man, it's.
I hope you.
Don't worry about it.
I hope as well if the next season is lack of Pele erupting, you'll continue to along on our journey because understanding what volcanoes do in between eruptions is very important, right?
And it's not like we'll also
cycle.
be able to look around at other volcanoes as we keep monitoring Pele, and we can use that information and see how Pele compares to other volcanoes as well. During this past season, we also had White like imploding a little bit, freaking people out.
Yep, and other things. So if you wanted to, if you could, by the way, consider clicking that like button, and if you have a volcano that you'd like us to review, if you put it into the comments soon, then you say, hey, tell me about a volcano, what it's doing. If there's information to talk about, we can feature it on a show.
I will also like to point out that we are getting Dapper Dino. He is at his 10K, so special congratulations to Dapper. He is doing his stream tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern. So if you are interested, go and check out Dapper over on his channel at 3 p.m. Eastern. He's doing like a special 10K subscribers. So definitely go and check it out. And also,
because Dapper is a hardworking dinosaur.
Oh yeah.
Also, we have coming up. We have on Wednesday. We have Dapper and Landon here to watch Ken Ham and Bill Nye debate.
Oh boy.
Bring your drinks.
Oh boy, yes, because yeah. Speak of volcanoes, eruptions. Yeah, but I think this time we're going to be focusing on Bill Nye and some of the trends.
We should be at the Bill Nye portion of this where I'm gonna pick on his rhetoric and Landon's gonna pick on his specifics, and Dapper's gonna sit there and laugh at us. And he's gonna be like, "What are you doing here?"
Do check out Dapper because he spends a lot of time. While his channel looks at some of the more crazy aspects of people's explanation for reality. He spends a lot of time showing about how we know what we know. That's you actually learn. Not only you can laugh at crazy stuff, you also learn about how we know what we know, which is a really good thing. I also give a shout out to Logic. He just went through a 10-part review of Our Conscious Universe, which is probably one of the more cringy things that you'll ever hear about. That's a special level of crazy. So
we also
but Chesh, you also go ahead. You have other things going on your channel too.
We've also got Saturday on the 10th. We'll have another unnamed tavern. We have a lot more things to cover. Sadly, Barry will not be able to join us that time. He is too busy, so we'll have to catch him another time. So for Brexity stuff. But I did have another thing. Oh, we should definitely add the book banning going on in America to our list. And I don't mean in one specific state. I mean looking at like the area that is kind of covering via states and districts, because I think that's going to be a little bit of valuable information and kind of seeing what kind of propaganda is in and around there and like why and what the politics are in those particular areas to see if there's like any kind of trend around it. I'm sure there's definitely a trend. As well as we're covering Brexit, and we're going to be looking at Ireland a little bit, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure by the time next week rolls around, we'll have a couple more things to cover.
I think we don't necessarily need to say the orange-haired man did something stupid, and the person of poor and full control lost another $1 billion doing something stupid. That's kind of not all of a sudden not news. But there are other news in the world that you might pay attention to, like Turkey just had an election,
Yep.
and other things. There's been there's rumblings around the world, not all volcanic.
What was that, Maanyaa?
And Maanyaa, what do you got going on in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, my next semester has started for my diploma, so yeah, I'm taking one course at a time, so yeah, I'm not going to overburden myself. And yeah, if you see that I'm not around that much, it's because of that, because assignments and shit, and
I'll be here for
with a full-time job.
Fridays.
Yes, but I will be here for
Yes.
Dumptech Friday.
Oh no, Smitty's tip came off. I have a little goober that I named Smitty, and his little top of his tippy came off. He's been circumcised.
Ah!
I was playing with it too hard. I'm sorry, Smitty.
This afternoon, I've been requested by my family to make cornbread from scratch.
Ooh,
so I'm going to make some cornbread.
Exciting.
Because I think there's a meal that someone else is planning where cornbread is going to be a part of that meal. So after this show finishes, I've got to go and make cornbread, not from a mix you get from the store, or not from the local bakery, but from scratch with special stuff in it.
All right.
Seasonings.
We're gonna get on out of here. We will see you. I'll be over saying hi to Dapper, so if you guys want to come over there, maybe I'll play something later on Twitch. Come and join me on Twitch for some silliness, but I'm off to go edit. Landon's off to go make cornbread, and Anya's off to go study.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.